there's so many people who are like, no, this is the way. No, this is the way. And people just can't accept that like different families are going to have different ways. And that's going to be like, quote unquote, best practice for that family.
Ever feel like you suck at this job? Motherhood, I mean. Have too much anxiety and not enough patience? Too much yelling, not enough play? There's no manual, no village, no guarantees. The stakes are high. We want so badly to get it right. But this is survival mode. We're just trying to make it to bedtime. So if you're full of mom guilt, your temper scares you, you feel like you're screwing everything up, and you're afraid to admit any of those things out loud, this podcast is for you. This is Failing Motherhood. I'm Danielle Bettman, and each week we'll chat with a mom ready to be real, sharing her insecurities, her fears, her failures, and her wins. We do not have it all figured out. That's not the goal. The goal is to remind you, you are the mom your kids need. They need what you have, you are good enough, and you're not alone. I hope you pop in earbuds, somehow sneak away, and get ready to hear some hope from the trenches. You belong here, friend. We're so glad you're here. Hey, it's Danielle. Couple updates for you before we dive into this episode with Renee. She is from the Mom Ruin podcast and has really active TikTok accounts and Instagram posts, and you are going to love what she has to say if you have ever felt like you were the only one out on a limb standing up for your family's choice in a certain matter and felt pressure to be doing it one way or the other. And she's just going to say it. She's going to say the controversial things. You may not agree with all of her stances, but I feel like we need to talk about these things and push the narrative a little bit. And so I love getting to hash some of these things out. She's really honest. I'm really honest. And I hope that it allows you to be even more honest and be yourself and your brand of parenting and do what's right for your kids. So before we dive into that episode, I wanted to give you a couple updates. So 2 things. Number 1, I think the last episode I shared with you that the Kickstarter launch was live for a project that I have co-created with Sarah Olsher with Mighty and Bright. And they are kids' mental health subscription boxes. And actually we have shifted and we're like launching now. So the biggest feedback we got was like these resources were needed yesterday and we can't wait through the entire international global shipping crisis to get things overseas. And so we are scrapping together a beta version. We're finding things domestically and we're making it work so that they can be shipped in January. So if 2022 is your year to get things back together for your elementary schooler who has been through the ringer, then you're going to want to start with box 1 and go all the way through each box. Because now we're not going through Kickstarter, you'll be able to just pay by month instead of all up front. And we have so much in store that is going to serve your family, that is going to provide structure, that's going to teach them emotions, that's going to empower them and help teach them about how to take care of their own well-being. I hope you'll check it out. The new website is kidsmentalhealthathome.com. I'll put that link in the show notes. The other piece of business I have to talk to you about real quick is Wholeheartedly Calm. The current group is wrapping up. We are in our 10th week right now out of the 11 weeks. And again, this group is for moms parenting strong-willed kids between the age of 2 and 7 that want to have more patience and improve their child's behavior. And this group is for you if you know that you are ping-ponging between discipline strategies, if you're swinging the spectrum from too permissive to too strict and back again, and none of it is working, and you know that with your strong-willed child, you need more tools. That's just the plain and simple fact of it. You know that there's things out there that you just don't know that you don't know, and you want to do it right. If they are 3, 4, 5, now is the time to set the habits and to create the trajectory for the relationship you want to have with them, and to do the work it takes to take control over the things you can control that allow you to have the composure that you would like in some of the hardest moments. Perfection is never going to be the goal. It's not attainable. Instead, we're looking to celebrate small wins and to have so much progress in an accelerated amount of time that allows you to feel like you are setting the example, creating the investment and the commitment that it takes for you to get the outcomes that you want. And you need more than a course. You need more than just tips and tricks and content, because you have the internet at your fingertips. You have the best books on your nightstand. I'm sure you do if you're listening to this podcast. But that's just information. Information does not create the transformation you need that comes when you have individualized feedback and a container to grow within and a community that is right there with you, trying things out alongside you and proving to you that what's happening in your home is happening in their home too. And you have that validation right alongside you. And that's what you'll find in Wholeheartedly Calm. We are rethinking discipline. We are cultivating cooperation with very specific scripts and strategies. We are becoming more aware of our own well-being and how that translates to our mindset, taking our thoughts captive, and we are creating the thoughts and the perspective that it serves us most, and then becoming more and more proficient in the ideas of collaborative problem solving, giving choices, empathizing and validating, offering more opportunities for connection in our relationship, maximizing our positive reinforcement, all the good things that you feel like you're failing at will give you the opportunity to figure them all out together. So that looks like short audio trainings at the beginning of the week, along with PDF cheat sheets. And then later on in the week, a 1-hour Zoom call as a group where you get to ask questions and share examples and get real-time feedback and kind of crowdsource ideas from everyone else that's trying out the same things at their house. And you get to actually implement and see what's going on and tweak and troubleshoot in real time, so you do figure this out. You're never going to be stuck. And I'm bringing this all up because the next round will start in January 2022, but it opens for enrollment Black Friday. The best way to get the best price for starting this next round will be registering either Friday, November 26th through Cyber Monday. I don't know if Cyber Monday is still a thing. I think everything is Cyber Monday now, but that's when you really need to make the decision to commit to yourself, that your parenting is worth investing in, and basically give the best Christmas gift to your child, which is really realizing how powerful and how influential these years are. You're not going to get this time back, and you want to spend it well by equipping yourself with more tools and more perspective and a person to cheer you on. So if that seems like it would be the right fit for you, if you are that mom, then put that on your calendar for November 26th and take action and set yourself up for success in the new year. I cannot wait to have you join. Okay, so for this episode, I'm chatting with Renee. She has a son who's 3. She lives in Toronto, and she had graduated with her PhD right before quarantine started, and she ended up creating content and then starting a podcast, and now this is what she does full time. In this episode, we talk about not liking to play with your child, not wanting visitors postpartum, not enjoying every moment, going away without your kids, sleeping separately than your spouse, sleep training, the difference between attachment theory and attachment parenting, and what's really actually freeing with what she has to say. She shares her wish for all moms. She shares how she's big into quitting. And ultimately, I love this quote, just because you're not enjoying certain moments doesn't mean you're not enjoying your kids. So I think in this episode, you're going to find a lot of validation, a lot of honesty, a lot of verbalizing the things that you wish that you could say out loud, and now you'll feel like you can. So enjoy this interview with Renee. Welcome to Failing Motherhood. My name is Danielle Bettman, and on today's episode, I'm joined by Renee. The Renee.
Hello. Yes, Renee. Renee Reina. So on social media, it's Renee Reina. So people think that my last name is Reina, but I'm like, that's just my middle name. So when you asked, what should I call you? I was like, just go with Renee.
Totally fine. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yes. So I am Renee, middle name Reina. I have a son who is 3 years old. My husband, we're both 36. Milo is our only child, and we don't have plans on having any more. I finished my PhD in psychology right before Toronto. We live in the GTA, and it was just a few days before Toronto kind of shut down because of COVID. And so that's kind of when things shifted for me. I had assumed that I would finish school and then get a research position or like become a professor in Toronto or something. And then when quarantine hit, because my husband's a physician, he continued his regular job, like as if nothing changed. And then I was at home with Milo. So Milo was probably like 18 months old when quarantine started. And so he was going to school or to daycare. I call it school. But yeah, I had previously started a blog where I just talked about things that I was surprised about after becoming a mom that people don't really talk about. And so once quarantine hit, I was done school. I had all this like free-ish time. I started focusing more on putting that stuff that I used to write about into social media content. And then I started making TikToks regularly. And that all just kind of kept growing and growing. And then I decided to start a podcast. So that started in the summer of 2020, right in the middle of quarantine. And yeah, so once the world started to kind of get back to normal, my husband and I decided that I would just keep doing this and trying to grow the podcast and grow my platforms on social media. So that's what I'm doing now. So it's kind of like everything just got flipped around, but I love it. So that's where we're at right now.
Well, you are very loved.
Thanks.
It didn't seem very hard for you to grow on all the platforms because you just found your people right away. And we need relatable figures to just laugh with, especially during quarantine.
Oh,
I remember finding some of your first TikToks and it was like, yes, like who is this person and how are you verbalizing what it's like to live with a toddler so well? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like I wasn't really afraid to, like, certain things about parenting really suck.
Yeah.
But like I feel like, and it's really hard, but I feel like we have this feeling like we can't complain about anything or else that means that we don't want to be a mom or that we don't like our kids and it's like, no, you can love being a mom. Like love your children, but it's still really hard at times. So if you can
Yes.
make a joke about it and put that on TikTok, then great. It kind of makes you feel a little bit better. But yeah, I think like some of my content, people are like taken aback by it because, you know, for example, I hate playing with kids. I don't like playing with other people's kids. I don't like playing with my child. Like, yeah, I do it because I like to see him happy, but no, I don't enjoy doing that at all. Like, I want to do adult things and hang out with adults. But when people hear that, they're like, oh my God, you what? Even though we're all thinking the same thing. Like,
yeah, deep down, it's all there. Yes.
it's horrible. It's mind numbing. It's boring. It's like they're not at the point where they're fun to play with when they're toddlers. So yeah,
Yes.
some people are like, oh my gosh, but deep down, we're all like, we don't like that. And
No,
I
you're
always
just
say
saying out
like,
loud what everyone's already thinking.
exactly. And I always think there's always some people that comment like, I love playing with my children and like I wouldn't trade it for anything. And it's like, if you really loved playing toddler things like the games, the coloring, the trucks, like after they go to bed, are you in the playroom playing those things? Because if you're not, then you don't like doing it. You're doing it because you like your child to be happy and engaging with your child and interacting, which is why I do it too. But I don't enjoy these things.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah,
like,
it's the motive behind it,
yeah.
which is great. Yeah. And that is why I had to connect with you and have you on this podcast, because the heart behind why I started Failing Motherhood was because we needed to talk more about the things we feel like there's a stigma to, which is feeling like you're not a good mom, feeling like
Yeah.
you're screwing it up, and feeling like there's all these expectations and things that everybody else is doing that you're not, but like you're the only one that feels
Yeah.
that way.
Mhm.
And so I was like, let's talk about this, because I did an anonymous survey, and like the predominant answer of what keeps you up at night about motherhood is feeling like I'm screwing this up. I'm failing. I'm not, doing right by my kid. My temper is, causing damage, and I hate it, and I'm the only one. And so I invite experts and moms next door to talk about what is that like for you. Have you ever felt like you're feeling like you're failing?
I don't necessarily relate to like the failing feeling because I think I understand like, no, this is really hard and my child is super happy and we have a great relationship. Like I understand that. So I don't necessarily think like, oh, I'm failing and I'm going to mess up my kid. But I always have the feeling, or at least I used to before all the social media stuff, because now I connect with so many people every day. It's like, oh, okay, we're all living
You're
the
so
same life.
validated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I remember like the first year where I was really just writing a blog post every now and then. I always felt like, am I the only one having these thoughts, like having these feelings, you know, from things like the postpartum recovery when it comes to the physical recovery, but also like the emotional part of it, the fact that I didn't want visitors at all for weeks. And this is such a major topic. Every time I post about this topic, it like blows up because nobody really talks about that. And I remember thinking, I do not want visitors at all. And I'm super confident and able to voice that to family and friends without feeling guilt about it. I was like, no, this is how I feel. This is what I want. Like, I'm recovering from birth. I'm the one that gave birth. Like, I don't care. This is what's happening. But so many people do not do that. And so I remember when I had such strong feelings about not wanting visitors and my mom was there with me and she was like the gatekeeper of that and was communicating with everyone else that I didn't want visitors. I remember thinking back to all the women that I knew in the last few years that had had babies and I was like, did they feel this way? But they just had people over? Because I remember visiting friends, when they had just had a baby. Because that's like what the like air quote normal thing to do is. That's what you see on TV in movies. It's like you have a baby and all these visitors are over all the time passing the baby around, and it's like that is the last thing that I wanted. So and then like the postpartum anxiety, same thing. Like, did everyone else feel this way? Like having like rage fits over trying to get Milo to nap on this specific schedule that was, he's this many months old, so he should be napping exactly at this schedule. So I had lots of moments where I would think, am I the only one that feels this way and that finds these things difficult and not enjoyable? Because I think as moms, it's like, #blessed, like you should be enjoying every single moment. And if you're not, people kind of raise an eyebrow at you like, well, what? Okay.
Yeah, because you asked for this.
Yes.
You signed up for this.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
I get that comment all the time. All the time. But yeah, it's more like, and I think it's starting to change because of social media and people are more vocal about these things. But some things in parenting, in motherhood, really sucks. And it's frustrating and it's like emotionally exhausting, physically exhausting. And yeah, you're not the only one that feels that way. Like,
yes.
And I think for a long time, what was presented on social media was like these perfect situations and nobody ever really talked about the difficult times. So it's extremely isolating to go through that. And then on social media or even in real life, like real life friends were not very open about difficulties in motherhood. So you feel completely alone. And of course you don't want to, speak out about it because you feel like you're the only one and people are going to look at you like, well, what the hell's the matter with you? But secretly, we're all feeling that way.
Yes. Yeah. That triggers a memory in me when I had my second daughter. I was like 2 months postpartum. I just had a C-section with her. And then I had a 15-month-old. And I was going to an in-person moms group for the very first time. I think it was like the second week. And the small group discussion was around like book recommendations or like something really superfluous. And I was like, everybody was talking about something that they were wanting to read with their spouse and like connecting on all these fiction books. And I'm just internally panicking because I'm like, my life is a shit show right now. I cannot even begin to talk about book recommendations. Like, I'm just trying to keep from not crying right now. And then I just started crying because like it became so overwhelming. And they're all like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I was like, my husband's an alcoholic. I have no family around. I'm falling apart. Like he cooks all our meals. And so basically I'm, surviving on granola bars and I don't know how to take care of myself. And like, I just started like vomiting all of this like honesty. And thankfully it was received well because they were all finally like, okay, somebody went first.
Yeah.
And then they brought me meals and it was like the best feeling, but I was terrified to be that first one to be like, this is awful. Like I am on the struggle bus and it does not feel like it's getting any better. And I have a degree in child development. Like of all the things, I was supposed to be the one that's like nailing this. So what the hell? And I feel like there's not only is no one talking about it, but you're also blindsided because you just don't know what you're signing up for. You have no ability to know what that reality looks like until you're in it.
Yeah, especially because people don't talk about it. So you really don't know what to expect because people, especially like even with the physical recovery after giving birth, you don't know what to expect because people tend to not be honest about certain things. And it's because they don't want to be judged, Same with like difficulties in motherhood and how hard it is. People don't want to be judged. And there's always people that are going to look at you and be like, oh, big deal. Like you have kids, like everybody has kids, like relax. It's not that big of a deal. And it is, it's life-changing and it's extremely difficult. And like when you were crying in this mom group, that has no reflection on how you feel about your children Or
Oh,
like,
right.
do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yes.
no, it's freaking hard. Like, it's hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like didn't want to take anything back. I loved both my girls with everything. I love how close in age they are. That wasn't of course intentional, but it's fine now.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, that I didn't want to, like, that had no bearing on my relationship with them. It was just all of the other things that made it even impossible to sit down and like hang out with them,
Mm-hmm.
just because of like all the stress and the fear and all of that. So yeah, being able to verbalize that and know that like it does not define you as a mom if you're enjoying every moment or not.
Yeah. 100%. Just because you're not enjoying certain moments doesn't mean you don't enjoy your children.
Yeah.
It's like, it's weird when Milo has really difficult times. Like sometimes he'll go through a phase where he's like super emotional in the evenings, and it makes our evenings really stressful, probably more so for me because I don't think my husband has the same like internal emotional responses to Milo being upset that I do. Like he
Mm-hmm.
just does not. And
Yeah.
so when Milo is like whining all the time and he's upset and like there's no kind of making him happy, like that really affects me like emotionally, and I'm like anxious and stressed.
Yep.
So uh, it doesn't mean that I'm like pissed off at Milo. I look at him and I'm like, oh my God, he's having such a hard few days, but it's not enjoyable. It's terrible. But like,
Yeah.
of course, I'm going to do everything I can to help him and like be supportive of him and stuff. But that doesn't mean it's not hard. And I'm not like wanting to run away.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think you did get a trip with your husband just I think last week, right?
This past weekend, yes.
For like the first time in
The
a while.
first time, yeah. Like we had been away for a night here and there when Milo was a lot younger, like before quarantine. So he wasn't as like aware of what was going on, and also not as attached to us and like able to verbalize things. So it was a little bit different. So this was the first time that we left for 2 nights in a row. And it actually, my mom said it went way better than she expected. And the first night, he had a little bit of a meltdown, just like very quick. And then she laid down with him and read him books and stuff. And then it was fine for the rest of the weekend. But like, yeah, it was the first time away from him in the evening. So now I'm like, Mom, get ready because now I know he's comfortable with you. She's like, let me recover from this weekend first. I'm like, okay, but make it quick.
Sign you up for next Friday. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like now I know he's okay.
Yeah. So what realizations did that give you, being able to have that experience?
That I just remember thinking, wow, because for example, every single evening, my husband and I technically have alone time because Milo goes to bed around 8 p.m. and then we're up for a couple hours until I go up to bed. But like, it's not the same as leaving the house. Like, it's not the same at all because you're in your routine, you're thinking about things that, revolve around the routine and getting things ready for school the next day. And, oh, I have to bring the car here to get the tires changed and remember to bring out the recycling tomorrow. And it's not the same. Like you fall into this routine. So I found like actually leaving the house, going to a different location without Milo being around, it was like my thoughts were completely different. Like I wasn't fixated on Milo and, oh, he's sleeping, oh, he just made a sound in the monitor, and it's like I could completely, like, my thoughts were free, and so you're able to like focus more on your partner. It was so bizarre. I was like, wow. Like, and plus we had friends there, so even just having adult conversations and being in a situation that we don't get to be in often since like before we had Milo, like hanging out with a bunch of other adults. and having adult conversations. Like that doesn't happen very often.
Right.
So even that like was different because especially because of COVID and how the past couple years have been.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, like seeing my husband like talk to other people and like we don't get to see that anymore because Milo goes to bed at 8 and then we just sit downstairs and do our usual thing, you know?
Right. Yeah.
It's so bizarre. Yeah.
And I feel like that is just like a hard thing in early parenting first 5 years anyway. But then add quarantine and a pandemic on top of it. And it's almost like we've been together more. We're in the same four walls more, but it's making it even harder to get to that next level of like connection and fun and spontaneity because you're just stuck. And so then like the default takes over and you're just coexist and, you know, more of that like roommate mentality takes over. And then it's harder to break back out of that because especially with the way that things have been, it's like, where's the finish line? When is this okay? What are the rules? How do I make this happen? And then it just doesn't because it's adding another element of hard on top of the day-to-day. So yeah, we just don't. And then we don't realize how much of an implication that has on how we're doing mentally or like in our relationship. And it doesn't, marriage is hard.
Yeah.
Is hard.
And I also find being home, like I work throughout the day, like Monday to Friday, whatever, when Milo's in daycare. And then Milo comes home from school. And like my husband's working as well. And then Milo comes home from school. We're trying to get dinner going. We're trying, you know what I mean? And so by the time the evening comes and we do have those couple hours together, I'm looking forward to just being by myself. Like, which is like, I have this ritual every single night before bed. I'm by myself in the dark, either reading my Kindle or watching Housewives on my phone. And it's so peaceful. And I have no like external, like sensory stuff coming at me. Like I'm just by myself in a dark room. I've been doing that since Milo was born. And so I look forward to that in the evenings. And so when we were away this past weekend, in the evening, I didn't have that kind of need to like go shut down somewhere because, you know, we were just doing the day casually and like not having so much like I wasn't focused on stuff. It was just kind of like a casual day. So that was a huge difference.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds lovely.
Yeah.
So while we're on the topic of basically just being able to say motherhood is hard and it's okay, what other controversial opinions do you share on your platform that tends to get a big bunch of comments?
So not liking to play with kids is, you know, we talked about that one.
Up on that.
Yeah, which is, a lot of people agree, but I don't think many people like vocalize that. Another thing that and this doesn't necessarily have to do with parenting, but maybe, is sleeping separately from my husband. Like we don't sleep in the same bed.
Yes.
So that is always another thing where I didn't even want to share that at first because it has this like stigma attached to it. Like, oh, you guys must not be doing well in your relationship, or obviously you're not intimate with each other if you're not physically sleeping in the same bed. And it's not the case at all. And then once I shared a TikTok about that, the comments were in like so many comments of people just like, yep, haven't slept next to my husband in years. And like, we're super happy because after you have kids, sleep becomes so important because it's not in your control anymore.
Yes.
So you try and take control of it. Like it makes perfect sense, but you become obsessed with sleep. So I'm a super high maintenance sleeper. My husband goes to bed later than me. He wakes up earlier than me. So it just doesn't work. If like before we had Milo, I don't care because I've been a student for so long. I make my own schedule. I work from home. It's not that big of a deal. If I'm tired, I'll take a nap whenever I want. Like sleep was not a thing.
Right.
Once we had Milo, sleep became a thing. And it's like, I am not sleeping next to you. because you're not coming into bed like 2 hours after I go to bed. I don't
Yep.
want to hear your alarm at 5:45.
Yep.
So it was a whole thing. So that people always have a lot to say about that.
Oh, yeah. And I will self-admit, my husband and I also don't sleep in the same room and haven't for at least over a year now, because I am the same way. I am an extremely high maintenance sleeper, and I wake up at the tiniest, like the dishwasher turning on, 3 floors away. I mean, I cannot sleep if there is movement, if there is sound. I wear headphones, like I switch out whichever one is not on the pillow.
Oh my God.
I have an eye mask, like the whole bit, because I need my sleep. And I get very stressed out and neurotic when I don't get it. But if I do, I'm a very happy functioning person.
Yeah.
So it's kind of do or die. And like this, and he also bakes very early shifts in the morning. He's got his own routine of stuff. And we had years where he needed to get a sleep study because he was snoring. And I mean, that was a very rough time in our marriage. Thankfully, he has a CPAP machine now, which are a dream. I recommend them for all couples everywhere. But still, like, even that's quiet, no longer an issue. I thrive knowing I can go and I can do like stretch next to my bed, and I can do my whole routine, and neither one of us are bothering each other, and he can stay up watching TikToks for only 2 hours, and I don't even know. We don't fight about it. It's fine.
It's so funny because when like we were away this past weekend, so we had 2 nights by ourselves, and the first night we rented this, it's like a little apartment kind of thing. And the couch is like a sofa bed. It opens up into a bed. And then the bedroom had a king size bed. So the first night we're like, hey, we're going to sleep together. Like we're on this little trip. And so he falls asleep instantly, which also gives me rage because I'm exhausted. I want to fall asleep. And then when I hear him start to like heavy breathe, which is like the indication that he is now sleeping, rage inside my body. And then he starts to like, it's not like a full on snore, but it's like the throat breathing. Mm-hmm. And like my heart started like beating fast. I was getting so mad. And so finally I woke him up. And I was like, can you sleep on your side? Because you're breathing really heavy and is driving me nuts. So he goes onto his side. It's fine for like a couple minutes. And then he starts again, which is, again, an indication that he has fallen asleep instantly. And I'm like, oh, I'm so angry. So anyways, the second night, he slept on the sofa bed couch. I was like a nice little couples retreat. Like my husband's sleeping on the couch. But hey, I had the best sleep ever and no regrets. So yeah, yes. He was on like this shitty little sofa bed with like this thin little blanket. Like I was like, oh well, like, but I don't feel bad because he can literally sleep anywhere. And that is a gift that he has. I do not have that gift. So I'm the one that gets like the bed with like the sound machine and all the things. So
do you still have like those like phantom sounds of like a kid waking up middle of the night, or like them like walking in your room and you're like, is there someone there? Is there not? I get that all the time.
That was incredible to me when he was a baby and I was on mat leave. Like even if I had a shower, if I did anything, I would think he was like rage crying, and you legit hear it. And I have that all the time, even still, because my husband sleeps with the monitor because, again, he's like a professional sleeper. So he sleeps with the monitor. And in my room, I'm like way down the hallway. I have my sound machine on, my humidifier, my diffuser, like all the freaking things. And I still think I hear him cry. And sometimes I like turn off my sound machine and I'm listening and it's silent in the house. And I'm like, oh my God, he's 3 years old. When does this end?
My kids are 7 and 8. It hasn't ended.
What? And I remember, where was I? I was in a hotel, not even at home. And I was hearing it.
Yeah.
So like that is, nobody talked about. I didn't know that was a thing, and it's a legit thing.
Yes. It feels like, I'm not ever going to liken it to anything that is dramatic like PTSD.
No.
But it feels like a very like
reminiscent feeling of all of the times that you're just like awoken by crying and have to continue to like parent during the night, that like it doesn't shut off.
Yeah.
Even though my kids have slept through the night pretty well. I mean, like we still have the occasional bad dream and all of that, but like
same.
It won't go away.
And also the thing about, and this is also why my husband sleeps with the monitor, if I hear something like that, like Milo get up in the middle of the night, my heart is like racing and it's like a fight or flight mode. Whereas my husband is just kind of like, he'll deal with it and then instantly fall back asleep.
Fall right back asleep.
But I am like ready to go as soon as I hear a sound. And then it takes me an hour and a half to fall back asleep because I'm so amped up.
Yeah.
So it's, and I swear to God, it's like an evolutionary thing. Why
it has to be.
Mothers are the ones that have this, you know?
Yes.
Because
It's just so validating to be like, okay, yes, like I'm not the only one. Again, like the whole point of both of our platforms is to say these things out loud so that somebody somewhere says, yes, me too. Thank you for saying that, because I never have I've never heard that anyone else struggles with the same thing that I do. And I've just been beating myself up for it, hoping that it changes or goes away. And can we just, I'll agree. We have our things and it's hard and we love our kids still.
Yeah. And that's another thing that I get pushback on is the fact that my husband sleeps with the monitor and gets up with Milo. And I just don't, because people are like, oh my God, he's a doctor. He works, Monday to Friday. Like he has got a busy, stressful job and he sleeps with the monitor. And it's like, yeah, he does. Because between the two of us, that's what works best for our family. Like my husband doesn't want me to be a miserable biatch every single day because I'm not sleeping and I'm up all night. And he gets that. If it bothered him, then we would probably take turns or something. But even when I offer to take the monitor, he's like, no, because he knows like he can deal with it in like 5 minutes, instantly fall back asleep. So it just works for us. And I think that is, like there's this weird like patriarchy thing of like parenting that still really exists where people are like, the mom has to do all that stuff. And it's like, no, how about you just figure out what works for the family and do that? Like, it doesn't matter who it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for us, we have always switched some of those roles too, because my husband is a chef.
Okay.
So
lucky.
I know. So it's one of those things where it's like, oh, you don't have to cook dinner every night. Like that must be so nice. And of course it is. It's fantastic. But like, then some of those roles then switch from being the quote unquote masculine and feminine roles. We take different ones and that's what works for us because he's happy to have that. At the end of the day, he looks forward to whatever he's making for dinner. It's like a form of like stress relief to get to make something and, spend that time together enjoying it. And do our kids hate what he makes? Absolutely. The more time he spends on it, the more they want to throw it right in the trash. And so it doesn't matter, like they're always going to be picky and that's okay. It doesn't go away no matter if he's good at it or not. But I think having that confidence to say, this is what works for us. It may not work for you. It doesn't mean one's better or not. I think that is one of like your big takeaway messages. It's like, do what works for your family.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Sleep training was a big thing too, that people don't like to talk about. Like that is such anything like formula, breastfeeding, sleep training, like all the major. Yeah. Oh yeah. That too. Oh God. Yeah. All these like big parenting choices are such, like they just create such a divide between people and people can't see like the gray area. It's like, there's so many people who are like, no, this is the way. No, this is the way. And people just can't accept that like different families are going to have different ways. And that's going to be like, quote unquote, best practice for that family, all those topics. Yeah, they're good ones, but it like ruffles some feathers.
Yes. And I hope that if we can ruffle enough feathers now, then like our kids will feel even more like they have all of the choices available to them of how they want to parent and what that's going to look like for their family, and know that they're doing the best they can with the tools they have for their kids.
And not have the guilt and not have the need to explain why you're doing something a certain way. Like, I think it's changing. So
good.
Yeah.
Yes. And I feel like it was really helpful, some of the things you were sharing about secure attachment and versus attachment parenting.
Yes.
And how that, can either correlate or not correlate with sleep training. So if I could give you just like a pedestal to stand on for a second to like feel like you need to say what families might need to hear or understand better, what would that be?
Yeah. So I'm not an expert in attachment parenting. I have an idea of what it is, but in the general population, I'm trained in attachment theory, which is, it's not attachment parenting at all.
Right.
So in the general population, like within parenting, I think when you mention attachment or you say like secure attachment, people relate that to attachment parenting, and it's completely not the same thing. Like fostering a secure attachment in your child is not done through like baby wearing, co-sleeping, all the things that attachment parenting kind of pushes or what it is. It's much more complex. It's like just knowing that your child is secure and knows that if they need you, you will be there. But then people get their like feathers ruffled when you talk about sleep training because they think, oh, well, secure attachment, your child's supposed to know that you're going to be there when they're having a difficult time. Like, how can you just let them cry? But like a secure attachment is built over time, over many, many, many interactions. It's like an overall like feeling or like environment that you give your child. It's not a couple nights of sleep training. And like, it makes me think about, like when parents are driving and their kids are screaming in their car seat, you can't like reach back there and hold them and comfort them. When kids are in the hospital and they're going through medical procedures and they can't have a parent there, or, they're having something done and the parent can't comfort them in that moment. Like those singular events, similar to sleep training, which takes like a couple nights, that does not affect or damage the child's attachment to the parent at all. Like it's, and I think it like creates this stress in parents to like, my child cannot experience any stress whatsoever. And that is totally false. Like every single human on the planet is going to face adversity and stressful situations. You cannot protect your child from that. And I think when people assume that a child having a secure attachment is like comes out of just never being stressed out and never crying, like that is not what it is. So I actually found someone who is like an expert in family attachment, and she's going to come on my podcast and explain everything. Because I was like, clearly this needs to be talked about because people are just so confused and they always think attachment parenting, and it's not the case at all.
Right. Because we want to have some black and white. Like if I follow this formula and check these boxes, then I'm doing the right thing for my child and we have a good relationship. And that would be nice, but that's not how it works.
No. And attachment parenting, from what I know of it anyways, and I've read a bunch of articles from experts in attachment theory, attachment parenting can often lead to an anxious attachment in a child because it is too much, like, yeah. So it'll be an interesting conversation with the psychologist that's going to come on, and I can't wait to hear what she has to say about like sleep training and all that stuff.
Yes. Because I think what you have been able to give permission for is for moms to consider their own well-being.
Oh God, yes.
And like so much of that secure attachment is based off of, is the mom okay?
Yeah.
Because the baby's just thriving off that vibe.
If a mom is having like mental health issues, anxiety, depression, it's very hard for them to respond to their child's needs in like a productive way. And like we all have moments where we're super stressed out. Like when I'm super irritable, super stressed out, like maybe having like an anxious day, I do not respond to Milo like I normally would. No way. Does that like damage his attachment on that one day? No. We all have ups and downs and we're all human. Like, but it's in general, our family, like our relationships with one another and how we treat Milo 90% of the time is what's important. But of course, like those days where I'm, not myself, I don't treat my husband the same way. I don't treat our dogs the same way. And I don't respond to Milo like I normally would. I'm like super short and like irritated. And that's okay. That's going to happen. But now imagine a mom who is never having any of their needs met. And they are like that consistently day in and day out. They are not going to respond in a like the best way, which is why it's so important that moms focus on themselves as well. It's not, and I think attachment parenting, and when people think like, oh, your child can only have a secure attachment if you're constantly, picking them up every time they need anything and just like hovering over them and co-sleeping and all this stuff. That's not the truth. And for some people it works, but for some people that's extremely detrimental to the mom or the parent's mental health. And that's not good, because the parent's mental health is a huge predictor of, having a secure attachment and like also a million other beneficial things for the child. So,
right.
But people don't like to talk about that. It's like, no. Moms don't matter. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And if that is like one of the things that like I can change the narrative of, then my time has been valuable, because I genuinely want parents to get, not that it's like pressure inducing that, they need to be perfect and handle stress, all the time and, have their shit together. But like, even just a little bit of taking the focus and the guilt off of how they are meeting their child's needs and just be able to meet their needs a little bit more, knowing that overflows and trickles down to benefit their child, then that can totally change the dynamic of the culture of the home and how things feel day to day, because you need sleep, you need 3 meals, you need to know that you're going to have space in your day just for yourself and be able to like be yourself in some way that your child can then see you and say, yeah, like this is an example I want to follow. This is the person I want to be around.
Yes.
And like, that's one of the main building blocks for that parent-child relationship to thrive and for you to have influence and for there to be mutual respect in the home and for all these other things, these outcomes that we want even be feasible. It starts and ends with you prioritizing your own well-being and your mental health as a parent without apologies.
Yes. I wish, like, my wish for all moms is to like fulfill yourself, and I think I had just like a funny TikTok the other day about like, oh my God, I miss my child so much. And then someone saying like, oh, are you going to pick them up early from daycare? And I was like, what? Like, no. Like, no. And so many people are like offended by that. Oh my God, you should want to spend all your spare time with your child. Like, what kind of mother are you? And it's like, no, because like I have interests and I want to rest for a couple hours, and like I want to read a chapter of the book that I'm reading, and maybe I want to FaceTime my sister and have an adult conversation. Maybe, like fulfill yourself too. And like, do you want your child to grow up thinking, like I talk a lot about like martyr, like moms being like a martyr. And like they think that that's the way to go. And it's like, do you want your children to grow up doing that as well? Like you would never want that for someone else. But people think like that's like you have a kid and then that's all that matters. Like, no, you're still a human. You're still a person with interests and hobbies and adult relationships. And yeah, like once your children are a little bit older and they don't really depend on you as much and they kind of have their own life, and like, what are you going to do at that point? And I think that's why so many like parents struggle when kids leave the house or go off to school or whatever it is, because they didn't like maintain their own life and interests while their children were young. I just thought of that right now, but I think that's I think that's accurate.
Yeah. I think there's another whole identity crisis that happens when who am I outside of this role of, you know, how I fulfilled my own purpose or passions through this relationship. And that puts a lot of pressure on kids to, you know, feel like they're making you proud or doing the things. And then that puts a lot of pressure on the relationship when the child wants to quit whatever extracurricular activity they're doing, you know, even though they're doing really well in it, or, you know, because there's these set of expectations that are fulfilling the parent. And that's not healthy to put that dynamic on the child. You should be able to say, I have my life over here and you have your life over here. And so we can detach a little bit from taking things personally that one person's doing to the other that has nothing to do with the other person. And that is good. Like I saw a survey that was really impactful one time that just asked kids, like, what would you want your parents to do differently? And they said, I just want them to be happier.
Ah, that's very interesting. See, there you go.
Yeah. Like they just want to see you living your own life and like sharing your own passions and interests and like being a person that is relatable. They don't want to feel like they consume your entire being.
Yep. And that your happiness and your worth is dependent upon how they perform and what they're doing.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm big into quitting. Like I you know, quitting has such a negative, like people think it's such a negative thing, and I'm all for quitting things when it's not serving you, like quitting relationships, quitting friendships, like whatever it might be, quitting a sport. I'm all for that. And I've quit so many things in my life and I never felt bad about it. My parents never made me feel bad about it. We're super supportive of everything, and like it really pays off.
Yeah, I feel like that's another one of those like, no, we don't talk about that.
Yeah, no, don't quit.
Loyalty,
you're a quitter.
Yeah.
It's like, no, why? Why? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of roads we could go down, but I probably need to wrap this up a little bit. So tell us a little bit more about how to find you, what you're doing on your platforms currently, all that good stuff.
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Renee Reina with the little underscore thing at the end. I never mention the Facebook community. I have a wicked Facebook. Do people say wicked anymore? I feel like that's
you can, it's fine.
I feel like so old. I have a wicked. No, I have a really nice Facebook community called the Mom Room community on Facebook. So yeah, it's just like people asking for advice, and everyone is very like-minded, and we monitor it really closely. So if people are, you know, if people aren't
stay in line,
nice, yeah, they're in trouble. So I recommend that. The podcast is called the Mom Room Podcast. It's on all the platforms. I make merch, which is really fun, and I need to start on some Christmas designs. So that's at the momroomshop.com. It's just like funny t-shirts and stuff. What else? I think that is it. And what am I doing on the platforms? I make TikToks, and I write posts on Instagram. Yeah, the podcast is super busy. I have 2 episodes a week. So the Tuesday episode is with a guest, and then the Thursday episode is a solo episode where I just talk about things that I'm thinking about at the time. So yeah, that's
awesome. I get an episode out every other week because it's just
it's insane.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's like
Yeah.
it's like a full-time job. Now I'm at the point where I can start outsourcing stuff to people. So that's helped a lot because I wouldn't be able to do everything that I'm doing. But yeah, it is podcasting. I don't think people realize how much work it is. So
it's worth it. We love it.
It is. It's so fun. Like you get to just have conversations, and especially after COVID and being stuck in the house, like you just get to talk to people. It's awesome.
Yes. And the conversations are so needed. And I feel like it's the most accessible platform for moms to be able to pop an earbud in while doing all the multitasking and still feel like you get to be a part of something. So I love that. Like, keep up all your hard work. It is so meaningful and so needed in the world right now. And it's changing the narrative of motherhood one post at a time. So keep up all of that work. But then the last question that I ask every guest that I have on is, how are you the mom that your kid needs?
I think I am always there. Like, the one thing that I love about being a mom is that I'm his safe space, you know? Like, that just feels really good. Like, my husband is as well. Last night, he was giving us a hard time at bedtime, and I'm thankful that my husband was his safe space at that moment. Like, he wanted my husband. I was like, you sucker. But for the most part, I think just being his safe space is like the number one thing that you can be for your child. Like, they know, and that's kind of leading back to the secure attachment thing. Like, they know that you are their safe space. So I think that would be like the number one for me.
And I'm sure that he would say the same thing.
Yeah, I'll ask him today. He'll be like, I want a cookie.
Yeah. It'll make you feel really good about the job
exactly.
you're doing.
Exactly. Sometimes I'm like, Milo, do you love mommy? He's like, no. I'm like, oh, okay, good.
But doesn't that actually show like that he feels safe enough to not give the right answer all the time? And so it's actually probably a compliment.
And I don't even think he understands, to be honest.
No.
That's what I tell myself anyways.
Which is why you need to find your identity and your purpose outside of what the feedback he's giving you, because it's never going to be the perfect report card.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us
for having
today.
me.
I feel like we covered lots of good things, and whatever a listener needed to hear, they got it today. So
awesome.
Thank you so much. So I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. Go check out all of Renee's stuff. You're going to laugh. It's amazing. And make sure to check out kidsmentalhealthathome.com, as well as putting Black Friday on your calendar. Not like you haven't already, but make sure to consider joining Wholeheartedly Calm for 2022. And leave a review if you've been loving the podcast. That is so appreciated and helps other moms find it. Thanks for coming on this journey with me. I believe in you, and I'm cheering you on.